Did you know that Jesus wasn't the only one to turn water into wine or heal the sick? Turns out these miracles weren't as rare as you might think. Okay, picture this. It's about 2,000 years ago. Well, technically 1992 years if we're being picky, but who's counting? Jesus is walking through towns like Galilee, Jerusalem, and Samaria. He's becoming the talk of the town. Everyone's whispering, "Did you hear about this guy? He's healing people left and right." But here's the thing. Jesus wasn't the only one known for healing miracles. Let me introduce you to another guy. His name was Asclepius. By the way, I upload videos every week. So, if you enjoy this kind of content, feel free to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you won't miss a thing. Okay, let's get back to the story. So, Asclepius is a Greek god of healing. He's kind of like the Doctor Supreme of ancient Greece. You know how today we have hospitals? Well, back then, we're talking over 2,400 years ago, people would go to these special healing temples called Asclepions. They were sort of like ancient clinics, but with a divine twist. Here's how it worked. If you were sick, you'd go to one of these temples, say a few prayers, and lie down to sleep. You'd hope Asclepius would visit you in a dream and either cure you outright or tell you how to heal yourself. People swore it worked, and they'd leave thank you notes. Now, here's where things get interesting. Both Jesus and Asclepius had their healing styles. But Jesus, he made it personal. Like that time in Bethsaida, a small town near the Sea of Galilee, where a blind man was brought to him. Instead of just saying, "Be healed," Jesus took the guy by the hand, spit on his eyes, and then touched him. Was it gross? Maybe. Was it effective? Oh, totally. The guy was like, "Whoa, I can see." Now, some historians think the stories of Jesus healing might have been inspired by tales about Asclepius. But to be honest, Jesus took it up a notch. Like, while Asclepius was healing rich folks in fancy temples, Jesus was out there helping the poor and helpless. He was basically saying, "I'm here for everyone, not just the VIPs. So, we all know the big story, right? Jesus' resurrection is literally the cornerstone of Christianity. Let's set the scene. It's around 33 CE, 1,992 years ago. Jesus is crucified by the Romans, dies, and is buried in a tomb. 3 days later, boom, he's back. Now, this wasn't just a casual, "Hey, I'm alive" moment. It was a game changer. The resurrection wasn't just about Jesus beating death. It symbolized hope, salvation, and eternal life. And when his followers started spreading the news, they were like, "You gotta hear about this guy who came back from the dead." People were hooked. But, you see, Jesus wasn't the first figure to pull the resurrection card. Enter Osiris, Adonis, and Tammuz, 3 ancient legends with their own comeback stories. Let's travel back over 4,000 years to ancient Egypt, basically 2,000 years before Jesus. Meet Osiris, the god of the afterlife. Now, Osiris has one of the craziest resurrection stories ever. Here's how it goes. Osiris's brother, Set, who's kind of the villain here, gets super jealous and decides to unalive him. But he doesn't just eliminate Osiris. He whacks him into 14 pieces and scatters them across Egypt. Yeah, talk about overkill. Here's where it gets wild. Osiris's wife, Isis, goes on a scavenger hunt to find all the pieces. She finds most of them, puts him back together, except for one part which, let's just say, wasn't retrievable, and resurrects him using magic. Osiris doesn't come back to life in the human sense, though. He becomes the ruler of the underworld. So, instead of walking around Egypt like, "Hey, I'm back," he's like, "I'm in charge of the afterlife now. Come see me when you get murked." Next up, we've got Adonis, the ancient heartthrob of Greek mythology. Now, Adonis isn't technically a god. He's more like a mortal so beautiful that even the gods couldn't resist him. Here's the story. Adonis is out hunting when he gets attacked by a wild boar. He dies, and his lover, Aphrodite, the goddess of love, is heartbroken. She begs Zeus to bring him back, and Zeus is like, "Fine," but he can only spend half the year alive and the other half in the underworld. So, Adonis's resurrection is more of a seasonal comeback. He's alive during the spring and summer, symbolizing life and growth, and then dies in the fall and winter. Now let's go even further back, around 3,000 years ago, to Mesopotamia, which is modern-day Iraq. Here's where we meet Tammuz, one of the earliest dying and rising gods in history. Tammuz was a shepherd and a fertility god, meaning his whole vibe was about life, growth, and renewal. But, plot twist, he dies, and everything goes to chaos. Crops stop growing, animals stop breeding, and everyone's like, "This is bad, really bad." His wife, Ishtar, the goddess of love and war, isn't having it. She marches down to the underworld to bring him back. After some intense negotiations, they strike a deal. Tammuz can come back to life, but only for half the year. Sound familiar? Yeah, his story is basically the ancient template for Adonis. Now, some people argue that the idea of Jesus' resurrection might have been influenced by these older stories. After all, the ancient world was full of myths about gods and heroes coming back to life. But most historians agree that Jesus' resurrection story was shaped by Jewish traditions, not pagan ones. So, let's start with one of the most famous miracles of all time. It's a windy night on the Sea of Galilee, about 2,000 years ago. Jesus' disciples are in a boat, struggling against the waves. They're tired, it's dark, and they're probably thinking, why did we agree to cross this sea at night? Out of nowhere, they see someone walking toward them. Not swimming, not floating, but straight up walking on water. But then they hear a familiar voice. It's Jesus, calm as ever, saying, "Take courage, it's me, don't be afraid." Peter, being Peter, shouts, "If it's really you, let me come out there with you." And Jesus is like, "All right, come on." So Peter steps out of the boat and starts walking on water too. For a moment, it's incredible. He's actually doing it. But then he notices the wind, freaks out, and starts sinking. Jesus catches him and says, "Why did you doubt?" They climb back into the boat, and just like that, the storm dies down. This wasn't just a cool trick. It was a moment that showed Jesus' followers he had power over nature itself. Now let's head over to India, around 2,500 years ago, about 500 years before Jesus. Here's where we meet Buddha, the enlightened one. Buddha wasn't about showing off miracles, but there are stories about him doing some extraordinary things to teach people lessons. One story goes like this. Buddha is traveling with a group of monks when they come to a wide, rushing river. There's no bridge, no boat, and no way to cross it. One of the monks says, "What are we going to do?" Buddha just smiles, steps onto the water, and walks right across. But here's the twist. Buddha doesn't do this to show off. It's all about teaching his followers to have faith and focus. The story isn't just about walking on water, it's about overcoming obstacles in life. Buddha's message is basically, if your mind is steady, you can cross even the toughest rivers. Now let's meet Krishna, one of the most beloved gods in Hindu mythology. Krishna's miracles are the stuff of legend, and one of the coolest involves him and the Yamuna River. In this story, Krishna and his friends are playing near the river, but the water is dangerous because it's home to a massive, poisonous serpent named Kalia. This snake has been terrorizing the area, and people are too scared to even go near the water. Krishna, being the ultimate hero, decides to deal with this. He jumps into the river, wrestles Kalia, and, in an epic moment, dances on the serpent's heads. Imagine this kid, barely a teenager, gracefully stepping across the heads of a giant snake while the river calms around him. Eventually, Kalia surrenders, and Krishna tells the serpent to leave the river and never come back. After that, the Yamuna becomes a safe, peaceful river again, and everyone celebrates Krishna as the protector of nature. Now, these stories also have deeper meanings. For Jesus, walking on water is about having faith even in the scariest moments. For Buddha, it's about overcoming life's challenges with a steady mind. And for Krishna, it's about protecting others and restoring harmony to nature. Okay, so it's the 1st century, and Jesus gets invited to this wedding in Cana. Now, Cana's this small town in Galilee, like a quiet countryside vibe. Jesus is there with his mom, the Virgin Mary, and his disciples. They're all having a good time, right? But then, disaster strikes. The wine runs out, and back then, that's a big deal. Like, imagine hosting a wedding today and running out of food. So Mary, being the supportive mom she is, leans over to Jesus and is like, "Hey, they're out of wine." Jesus kind of shrugs it off like, "What's that got to do with me?" But you know how moms are. They don't take no for an answer. She's basically like, "You're fixing this." Jesus then tells the servants to fill 6 big jars with water. These things are huge, like 20 to 30 gallons each. Then he says, "Now take some out and give it to the guy in charge of the party." And guess what? It's not water anymore, it's wine. And not just any wine, it's the good stuff. Now, while Jesus was over in Cana turning water into wine, let's rewind about 400 years earlier to Greece. Meet Dionysus, also known as Bacchus, which was the Roman version, is the Greek god of wine, parties, and chaos. This guy was all about turning up. Dionysus was famous for doing some wild miracles. One of his biggest party tricks? Making wine appear out of nowhere. There's this story from Pausanias, a Greek historian who lived about 1,800 years ago, roughly 225 years after Jesus. He talks about a temple where worshippers would leave empty jars overnight, And boom, by morning, they were full of wine. Talk about divine delivery service, right? So, here's the question. Who did it better, Jesus or Dionysus? Jesus' miracle was super classy. He saves a wedding from total embarrassment and brings joy to everyone without even taking credit. And Dionysus? He's more like the life of the party who crashes the event and turns the whole thing into an epic rager. Also, Dionysus' wine miracles were tied to rituals and celebrations of his cult, which spread all over the Mediterranean. People in places like Thebes, where he was born, and Asia Minor threw massive festivals in his honor. Now, historians have debated whether the Gospel of John borrowed this wine miracle idea from Dionysian myths. To be honest, it's kind of hard to say. Some scholars think the similarity is just a coincidence. Others argue that the writer of John might have known about Dionysus and wanted to show Jesus as the true miracle worker. But there's no solid proof either way. So, picture this. It's the night before Jesus is crucified. He's gathered with his 12 disciples in a room somewhere in Jerusalem for what we now call the Last Supper. It's not just any meal, though. This one is packed with meaning. You've got bread, wine, and one of the most emotional moments in the entire story of Jesus. This moment becomes the foundation of the Christian practice of communion, or the Eucharist, where believers eat bread and drink wine to remember Jesus' sacrifice. It's intimate, spiritual, and deeply symbolic. Now, what if I told you Jesus wasn't the only figure associated with a meal like this? Enter Mithras, a god worshipped by soldiers in the Roman Empire. Let's jump back to the first few centuries after Jesus, around 100 to 300 CE. Roughly 1,900 years ago, the Roman Empire was buzzing with a mystery religion dedicated to Mithras, a god from Persian mythology who became super popular among Roman soldiers. Mithras wasn't just any god, he was a divine warrior who performed heroic deeds. One of his biggest feats? Slaying a sacred bull. This moment was so important that it became the central image in Mithric temples. Seriously, every Mithric temple, called a Mithraeum, had a painting or sculpture of Mithras stabbing a bull, while animals like a dog and a snake drank its blood. But here's the thing. After killing the bull, Mithras celebrated by sharing a ritual meal with the sun god, Sol Invictus. What did they eat? You guessed it, bread and wine. This meal was reenacted by Mithras' followers in their ceremonies. Sound familiar? Now, we don't know all the details about these rituals because Mithraism was a secretive religion. Its followers didn't write much down. They liked to keep things mysterious. But from what archaeologists have uncovered, it's clear the meal of bread and wine was a big deal. So, here's where things get interesting. Both Jesus and Mithras are connected to symbolic meals of bread and wine, but the vibes are completely different. Now, some people wonder if early Christians borrowed the idea of the bread and wine meal from Mithraism. After all, the two religions existed at the same time and shared some overlapping symbols. But to be honest, most historians don't think so. First of all, Mithraism was mainly practiced by Roman soldiers, while Christianity spread among all kinds of people. Rich, poor, men, women, slaves, you name it. Plus, the bread and wine in Christianity comes straight out of Jewish traditions, like the Passover meal. It's more likely that both religions were influenced by the broader cultural environment of the Roman Empire, where shared symbols were pretty common. Here's something to think about. Why do so many cultures and religions use meals as symbols of something bigger? Maybe it's because food is universal. Everyone eats. And when you sit down to share a meal, it's not just about the food. It's about connection, community, and something deeper. Whether it's Jesus saying, "Remember me," or Mithras celebrating his victory, these meals remind us that food has always been more than just survival. It's a way to connect with the divine. Now, does this mean all these figures were inspired by each other? Maybe, maybe not. It's hard to say. But what's clear is that miracles, whether they're part of religion, mythology, or folklore, are universal. They speak to something we all share, no matter where we come from or what we believe. So, whether you see Jesus as a savior, Krishna as a protector, or Dionysus as the ultimate party planner, one thing's for sure. These stories remind us of the miracles in our own lives. The little moments of kindness, the unexpected blessings, the times when things just seem to work out. Maybe those are the real miracles. And with that, we close this chapter. Thanks for going on this journey with me. Who knows? Maybe the next miracle is just around the corner. So until next time, take care.